Hello, hello, and thank you, Jian and Kyle, everyone. I think it's been great. I've been attending awesome AI dev tools for like more than 3-4 months. I think at least sporadically attended a couple of events, really great events and like great demos. I always thought I would present, so I'm glad that we are able to do it while I'm in city. I'm from Amsterdam. I flew in for the event and also like to work with the colleagues. We are put up in Walnut Creek. CodeRabbit, as you could see, is like a code review company. But then I'll talk more about what we do and what's the dev tool like and how we built actually. I'm not just going to showcase like a few points that I want to talk, but then more about the demo and then how the entire AI agent would really work like. And then if you have, I also want to make it like more interactive and informal. So if you have any questions in between, I'll try to see around and then let us make it more like conversational, right? If you have questions, feel free to stop me and ask. But how many of you have heard about CodeRabbit? Have used, maybe like tried? Okay, interesting, not bad. So yeah, I think it's like a vibe reviewing copilot for your vibe coding tools. So I'm Aravind. Like I said, I did my intro, and I'll just quickly move over. So what CodeRabbit does is like an agentic AI code reviewer. It has a lot of capabilities, but then basically at the core, it reviews your code on your GitHub and all the Git-related platforms. And it does all the reviews right in your regular developer workflow where you raise your PRs. And it also honors your like the dev tool chain, so you're not trying to reinvent or do things right differently. Like say, for example, you're not looking at your something that you're redefining something very new. If you are using a linter, you're using a specific formatter. If you have some configs that you have defined for your existing tool chain, we all pick up that tool chain and like try to give you a nice review. If you are using like some traditional security scanners, code scanners like SonarQube and all, you still get good review including. So basically we cut down a lot of noise, and I'll also show you how like probably like an architecture of how we do all of that. And on top of that, you also get to add some custom instructions on how you really want the code to be reviewed. Say, for example, if you want your code to be reviewed according to like a JavaScript style guide that probably Ken Dots has written, or JavaScript style guide like to be specific to a Google or a Facebook style, like how React reviews the project. So if you have more of such guidelines, you could also choose to mention that and we honor that. You could also define, say, for example, a lot of these open source projects, you look at like code smells and stuff that you really don't want long term that impacts your code quality, and the boring stuff, right? So we have AST grep patterns that you could custom write it or use some of those that we define in the open source and like leverage them to kind of like build a better code quality structure. And all of this happens right in the minute when you raise a pull request, and I'm going to show you how you could do it. But apart from that, we've been now, I think, pushed onto from the community to do more use cases, like say writing code documentation and unit tests, and even now I think we are doing more workflows that are like refactoring and things like that. But then let me show you like who and all use CodeRabbit. CodeRabbit is like really popular in the open source, been used by like really 70,000 open source projects and installed like nearly 1 million repositories. But then a lot of feedback really comes from open source, and they are like biggest users, and then you could also find us in the open source. So I'll quickly show a demo and talk through it and try to share more rather than showing more points. So I have this app where, as you know, we all have GitHub profiles, and we bookmark these repos, right? But then those stars like stay in GitHub profile, and they don't get organized. GitHub has this awesome list feature, but we rarely use. How many of you use GitHub list feature? Like you start a particular project and like probably add it to a list? Not so many, right? I think at least I don't do it proactively. So this particular feature is about like, say, for example, if you give your username and try to categorize it. I don't know why it's not working. But then again, so basically, it categorizes your it categorizes your like entire GitHub repositories into different categories, and then probably you will also be able to create this list onto your GitHub profile. So this is one such repo, and I just want to like add some more features, and then I want to raise a pull request, and I'll show you how you can do that. So in the regular, as I have few new commits, and then I want to like raise this one into the base branch, and then I just click create pull request, and with all the changes, and it'll start automatically get picked up by the CodeRabbit, and it'll take some time to review the code. As this process PR, I'll also showcase more features because it might take some time to review the code. But it will not take as much as time that probably your peer would take. One another thing that I would want to specifically mention that CodeRabbit is not removing the reviewers from the flow. We're also like augmenting the entire code review process with AI, trying to being a helpful assistant than being like something that we cut through all of that, like the humans from the loop. No, not like that. But we're just trying to be a helpful assistant in terms of like how do we improve the overall workflow and try to make it more useful for the developers. Yeah, like I said, I think you could go and check a bunch of PRs if you really want to. Like, there are a lot of PRs that are reviewed already, like say nearly at least 1 million in the open source itself. So how does a review look like? Like while this review is getting processed, in the interest of time, I just want to like run through how a review would look like. Say when you have a new commit and you are raising a new PR review, CodeRabbit provides a summary, and this summary you could also like structure, make it a bit better according to your style. And it'll give you a brief walkthrough of files. It'll also give you a sequence diagram of what your changes are, and a poem that you can turn off if you don't like, and and then like more information on how specific things work out. Like say we use ensemble of models and also like ensemble of agents, and those are assigned in the review as per the task, and not specifically like only one agent to work on a specific area. So it depends on the code context and code base and everything. So here in this case, there are a bunch of comments, and there are like more things that we could go deeper into. A little deeper. Any questions until now? Anything that you think that it's something that maybe it occurred to you, why this one, or like if you have any thoughts in between? We have time. Yeah. So this is like a regular code review process that any team would run into. Like everyone who has like some sort of like org, and then there is a team, and then they would want to check do a peer review of your code. So that's where code review comes in. Like this is not like a pipeline, but what I would consider this is still like a workflow than like something that is being built as such. While there is a CI/CD workflow wherein you build something and you check whether the build is successful or failed. That's what I would call as pipeline. Well, another thing is like CodeRabbit can also fix your builds like in the same workflow that you have in the PR. So I don't know if I answered your question or not. Oh yeah. It does have context to the project. So we have a feature that's called code graph. So let me try to find it. I think I have a bunch of PRs that I want to show. So hopefully it comes up somewhere. So what CodeRabbit does is whenever there is like a PR that get traced, we create a sandbox and clone the entire repository and also the tools. And we kind of like build the context before we start suggesting code review comments. And those comments are also verified. And some of the comments don't make it to the final PR workflow eventually. So it gets probably not posted, but then put into like say nitpicks or different ways based on the profiles, based on the review criteria that you have. So we do build enough context. We in fact actually do a AST grep of your entire code base, and then we call it as code graph, wherein we create an entire code graph, and then we kind of overlay your changes onto your existing code base, and then try to derive some sort of comments out of it. So, but then this is not just LLM. I'll just try to show the architecture diagram in a minute, but then this is more. I'll try to show more. Just give me a moment. So CodeRabbit can suggest, say, for example, uh, features, like say, if you have a latest thing. Okay, let me give you an example. So in the case of LLMs, right, the knowledge is cut off at some point. And a lot of times we ask things that are more real time, and then LLM doesn't have that knowledge. Say probably a newer library, a newer coding standard, maybe a new thing that's happened in the last few months, but the model might be older. So what we do is, like, we have a feature called web search, wherein we kind of, or we call as web query, wherein we kind of like can make a web query to the entire, to the project and get the result, and then we can like summarize and then post that comment. And this happens in a non-deterministic workflow. So all of these analysis, or what we call as agentic data validation, happens automatically. And we also generate custom scripts for each of these code review comments. And then, like, all of this happens at that moment. And sometimes we show this analysis chain that you could go and open up and see why this happened. Sometimes it doesn't show up because I think it's a random comment. Also that comes up. But then there are wide varieties of comments that we make. It could be about refactoring. It could be about security issues and many, many things. Say in some cases, or most importantly, people want to fix their lint errors or fix their errors from security tools or scanners, but then they do it in IDE, but it still comes up in the PR because you skip probably what you think as false positive might be a real issue in the real production. So what we do is, like, we cut all the noise and we try to bring up or bubble up the real issues through the tool integrations. We integrate with roughly 20 tools or 20 plus tools, like in the code quality, code security, like, and your linters and formatters, etc. Even like your grammatical typo errors, to-dos, console log statements, things like that. And then these help you to kind of like showcase. And some of these, like, you can see it here. Let me see if I could find some of them. So for example, this is like a JavaScript review, and then you see biome and ESLint, and then it talks about like specific errors or tools or things around it. So CodeRabbit can also generate like AI code, like documentation or doc strings for the same PR. It raises a stacked PR over the PR, and then you could see that, and all of this happens within the same PR context, and then you could add more information. You could also customize how the or the doc string would want to be written as well. So if you want, say, like written by so-and-so, or like, according to this guideline, things like that. So you could do all of that. And now, in the recent times, I think there's more requests on, like, say, oh, there are some of these good comments, but we can't really do that at this point of time. It happens in all the code review comments, right? Like, you really want to implement that, but you don't want to do that at that point of time. So earlier, we used to kind of like ask people to create issues, and CodeRabbit will always like gather all the context and raise a GitHub issue. But now you could plan features and ask CodeRabbit to execute. Say, for example, in this particular repo that I have, or the app that I have a refactoring suggestion, and I ask CodeRabbit to plan that feature. And it does planning. It kind of like comes up with options, and if you don't like it, you can go and talk to it to, like, take over a different tangent, to explore a different architecture pattern, etc. Here it is suggesting a couple of options, and then a short-term and a long-term solution. And then I did ask it to like perform a short-term solution, and it raised a PR with those changes, as you could see. So there are a bunch of people who are already trying this feature, and then we're finding like really useful. Say, there are a lot of like folks who are trying this particular feature. So how all of this would happen, right? I think there's limited time, but then I'll try to showcase the architecture diagram back and then see if we could complete it. So we integrate with a lot of Git platforms, but in general, like, we build a lot of good context for the entire code base. And all of this also happens in a sandbox environment, so you don't need to worry about like, code security or or leakage, and everything is ephemeral. That means once the code review happens, there is no trace of your code in the cloud or somewhere. So each sandbox gets spin up and it's gone. We don't even store the reviews, so we don't know what's went in. You could also do send these reviews to the Slack. You could also do these reports. All of that you could branch into multiple LLMs. So yeah, there's more. I think one interesting part that I did not cover yet I could see is we also store these learnings, like say org-specific learnings. Say each person or each org, they might have their own set of standards or their own set of learnings. So we store that in a database wherein you could refer that as a basis for the code reviews to happen. Give CodeRabbit a try. I think if you find it interesting, I think this particular coupon gives you nearly 2 months of trial. So give it a shot if you are interested. Thank you. Any questions?
All right, let's hear it for Aravind. Thank you very much.